Hi, sister. How you doing?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're so pretty.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I should call you Toba or Tobs or Benson or Poetic Goods. Or what is it that I should call you today?
Well, for the people, hello. My name is Tobalase Apata, and I am also Miss Poetic Goods.
And that's on period.
But what else? Benson is an inside joke.
Right. So whatever I call her today, that doesn't mean everybody here can start calling her that.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
You have to be there.
Exactly. And you weren't. All right. So I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Thank you so much for being here. How do you feel?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I love having conversations with fellow conversationalists. So I think it's going to be a really good talk. I think it's important. I think so many people are starving when it comes to conversations about grief, and we all need it because we all go through it. So I'm excited to be a resource.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. I'm glad you're feeling good. I'm glad you're excited. I am also looking forward to this. Okay. So I like to start with a little bit of a lighter question that has nothing to do with the topic, and then, ease us into it. You see? Okay. So I was thinking about what question I wanted to ask you, and I'm still kind of torn, but yes. Okay. I think I know. So Taba, you wear a lot of different hats.
Literally,
aside from the hats you're wearing right now. So you wear a lot of different hats. You have a lot of different titles. You're an artist. You're a creative. You're a sister, friend, all them things. People don't know you're a businesswoman, business owner. But I don't know how many people know that you're also a chef. So if you don't know about Chef Tops, come to find out. Okay. So my question is about cooking. It's okay. So you just got a call that there's a dinner party in 2 hours, and they're expecting you to make a dish for the dinner party. So the dinner party is in 2 hours. So really it's giving you have an hour and a half, and then you got to drive there. Right. So what is the go-to dish that you would cook? And tell us, just take us through how you would cook it.
It's a potluck?
It's a dinner party.
Right.
It's giving.
Are they relying on me to bring?
You're not everything. No, one dish.
One dish.
One dish. Yes, it's a potluck. Exactly.
Okay. Potluck. So that being said, honestly, my curry chicken, sis, that's my go-to. The curry chicken is a winner.
Chicken dinner. Come on now. Come on. Now, I wasn't going to say it. But you all, the last time I was in Chicago was like just over a month ago. And this here girl, she made this curry chicken. Was it curry chicken? You also had goat in it.
Yeah, I had beef in it as well.
Okay, you had beef and chicken. And the way that thing fell off the bone, it was so good. Anyway. Don't get me started. But yes, okay, so it's going to have to be a curry chicken.
It's going to have to be a curry chicken, quick and easy. The people love it. And
do you have a secret ingredient?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I'm not a secret ingredient girl, but what I would say, I'm my mother's daughter. We don't have like recipes. The pot tells us. Yeah, that's how my mom cooks.
So what is it that the pot told you that day that you made it for me? Because it really must have been saying something. Please tell me what the pot was saying.
The pot was saying everything is right. Everything was right. The ratios are right. The seasonings are right. Everything was in there right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll get into that another conversation about my mother's influence on my cooking. Yeah.
Okay. Love that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Curry chicken it is. Okay. Well, as you know, we're talking about grief, but I like to start with a few context setting questions. And so the first question is, how would you describe our relationship, Toba and Damisi?
Sisterly. You've been my oldest sister since I was born. So yeah, I mean, it's not a long answer. You're my sister, by choice. And it's looking like it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. But yeah, it's a sisterly relationship.
Yeah.
What about you?
No. I would just yeah, you too. Like, that's my girl. That's my sister. That's my Benson. That's my that's my sister. Yeah. That's really all there
Feelings
is.
mutual.
Feelings
That's
mutual.
good.
So you kind of already shared a little bit, but if there's anything else you'd like to share as to what your thoughts were when I first asked you to be on this podcast and talk about this topic, and why you ultimately decided to say yes.
Well, I mean, the answer was never going to be no. again, you're my sister. So you're starting something. It was going to be a yes. So there's that. But again, I just remember going through my seasons of deep grief. And again, that the word starving comes up because there was no one who spoke about the topic deep enough to help. And we need validation in our deepest, darkest moments of pain. And a lot of people don't have the range to discuss such a heavy topic. So I'm like, you know what? As a writer, as a poet, as a speaker, whatever you want to call it, my job is to speak on things. And so why not speak on this tough subject?
Yeah, I felt that. And I, you almost wish you didn't have the words to talk about it, because when you do have the words, it means you have the experience, and so it's interesting. But yes, like I have found that it's healing a lot of times when I've talked to people who have experienced grief, because I feel less alone, and there's just this camaraderie and community. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I do appreciate you accepting the call. Okay, so the first question I want to ask is about the stages of grief. So I know you've heard about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a way that, people describe like how they experience grief through these stages. Some people say it's not linear, you go back and forth between the stages. I did take notes on what the stages were. So we have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Other people would say like, grief can't really be described, or it can't be put into any category. So my question for you is like, can you describe what your stages of grief were, are, like if you were to put it in your own words, you can use these words or not use these words, but like, the question is describe your stages of grief.
Well, anger is usually my first stage of grief. I'm usually a very anger bitter person, reasonably so. Mm-hmm. And I allow myself to be. For some reason, when it happens, it's always at a peak of a busy season in my life, right? So I think I'm already at a heightened state of, again, busyness, annoyance. I'm very irritable. And then boom, this huge earth-shattering thing happens that just amplifies everything else that you're already going through. So yeah, I guess I would say my first stage is definitely anger, annoyance. Bargaining, I don't necessarily try to bargain. It just becomes curiosity. I would say I would swap it out. Like, where are they? Why? Why now? Are you serious, God? So I don't necessarily try to say like, bring them back. Unfortunately, I think I don't know. I just know that they can't come back. So I don't try to do that whole like, it'll make me feel worse if I try to do that. So I just don't do that. But I more so say like, why God? Why now? Mm-hmm. Why them? The questions. And then the forced acceptance. I guess it would be, and I use the word forced because it had to be thrown in there because that's not ever something you want to accept, but you have to. The term new normal, So yeah, I would say those 3 steps, those are my condensed steps of grief.
Stages, okay.
Yeah.
So anger, questions, forced acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And do you find yourself kind of going not necessarily from one to another, but like back and forth?
Sometimes they're individual, sometimes they're concurrent.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you had to like describe your relationship with grief, how would you describe that?
Unfortunately, now it's familiar. Unfortunately, now I think that I'm very familiar with grief, and just in the past 2 years, the amount of funerals I've been to. In fact, in 2022, I literally ran out of PTO because of the amount of funerals that I had to go to in 1 year. Yeah. PTO simply on funerals, not on, it wasn't shared with vacation. It was simply on funerals, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'm familiar with grief as I'm maturing and I'm, becoming a grown woman, I would say. Okay. I mean, I'm just understanding the fact that grief is for the living, and you either mourn or you are mourned. And that's one of the questions or the statements I say to myself, like, Toba, would you rather be mourned or would you rather mourn? Honestly, I think maybe a lot of us ask ourselves that question. I don't know. Have you ever asked yourself that question?
No, that was profound to me because I'm like, yeah, that means like, it's inevitable that like as long as you're on this earth, you're going to experience grief. You're going to, experience somebody dying. Okay. So, I mean, we haven't like dived into your specific experience. So I guess like the question is, when did you first experience grief? And how does that compare to the other experiences of grief you had after that? If you want to just describe like as little or much detail as you want, like your...
Well, again, grief as an adolescent is different than grief as an adult, and you understand the permanence of it.
Right.
So the first time I understood it was I was in college, and I want to say about 3 people, they were all men, 3 men I knew committed suicide. So it was very close to home. And again, for some reason, when grief happens, it's in bulk for some reason. And so it was literally just these men who who appeared to be so successful in their careers, taking their lives. And so that was tough to watch. But of course, the one that I'm sure you were asking me about is Tiffany Mordi. She passed away on March 18th, 2022 at 11:45 p.m. And honestly, the way that we measure life by like BC and AD and all that stuff, there was life before Tiffany's death and after it, because I have never been the same. I mean, yeah, when you think of the worst case scenario, literally one of my worst case scenarios in my life before this happened was one of my family members getting shot and killed. And then on top of that, on their birthday. So that situation made me come face to face and eye level with what happens when the worst case scenario that was a nightmare of yours happens. What do you do? And that situation, of course, made me question God. It made me question God's goodness. Is God a just God? Is he a fair God? All those questions. It made me literally change the way I live. I couldn't go out the house. Like once the street lights came on, I literally started shaking. It was something that not a lot of people knew that was happening to me, but because all they saw was, I guess, the fruit. Because unfortunately, when I get sad or anything, I get busy. Busyness is a coping mechanism for me.
Right.
So a lot of people didn't know I was crumbling because all they saw was me building. So there was this contradicting area of life happening. And that's another thing. What I'm learning is grief is for you. Grief is for you. It's yours. No one will understand how you grieve. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to write a thesis on your grieving process. Just do it. Again, if you want to do things like this where it's helpful for people, maybe someone else can, find truth in my story or whatever, but I don't have to explain anything to anyone. But anyway, I say all that to say grief kidnaps you, especially when it's a sudden death. And then like, if you even want to make the comparison between anticipatory versus sudden death, anticipatory death, you're holding your breath because you don't know when it's going to happen. And then sudden death, it knocks the breath out of you. So either way, you're left unable to breathe, right? Or short of breath. And it's tough either way. So yeah, that's what that situation was for me. I felt kidnapped by grief. Naked.
Kidnapped by grief. Naked. When you say that, is there there's a loss of control too, right? Because, you said you get busy. That's part of your coping mechanism. You are very successful. You have your own business. You have things going on. And, I know that you're somebody who does. You're an initiator. You're a mover and a shaker. So with you feeling like grief kidnapped you, it's almost like you're paralyzed or like you are being... When I think of kidnap, I'm like, okay, somebody's taking you, somebody's restraining you. You don't have a lot of like, so is that how it felt? Like you out of control? Like describe the kidnap metaphor more.
Well, that's the thing. Like you just explained, in order to be a doer or a dreamer, all those things, you have to be able to have vision, right?
Yeah.
When grief kidnaps you, seeing the next 5 minutes is tough. So it literally made it extremely hard to dream or to visualize or to ideate, all these things that are necessary to be a creative, to be a business owner, to project the next 5 months or whatever you want to call it. You were just worried about getting through the day. Right. So it made it tough to see beyond your current circumstance. And that's what I mean by that. And then on top of that, like, you know, grief kidnaps you and takes you to a remote location. It's isolating. It drops you off on this island. And and the ransom it asks for is hope. But that is just so expensive at the moment. You don't know who to call on. Because again, grief strikes communities. You guys are all without hope. Hope is scarce within the whole community. So who do you ask?
Right.
To pay that ransom?
Ooh, there's a lot you just said there. I think I want to hone in on the community aspect, because me and you have had conversations about how friendships have changed and, you know, people show up in different ways when people experience grief. So with that being said, like, it being isolating, you feeling alone, like, were there people you could call on? What experiences did you have with friends or community that, you know, were positive or negative? Just describe your experience with community or the people you loved.
Honestly, it made me love my inner circle the most. You think of your communities like the sun, the layers of the sun, right? And the core, your core community, the people who you look up at the gravesite and they're there. Those are the core people who I could call on, because they're feeling it too. Now, don't get me wrong, the people who are on the outer layers, they still want to support you, but there's something about not knowing the depths or the gravity of that pain that they cannot support you. And then on top of that, for those people on the outer layers, your grief has an expiry date. So as much as they would like to continue to support you 5 months in, they've moved on. They've done their part in their eyes, which honestly, maybe they have, you know, because people's life moves on. Even for you know what I mean? Even for you.
Life keeps happening.
You know what I mean? Life keeps happening. So it's tough to rely on people who, they're like, okay, I've done what I could. I have to get back to my life. And eventually, you know, trauma takes turns. Tragedy takes turns. So one day you're on the other side of it, and the other day you may be that supporter where, like, you know, all you have is 5 months. You know, so I don't even hold a grudge about it. It just is what it is. And I think that comes back to the whole familiarity with being a griever. You know what I mean? I know how this stuff goes. But I say all that to say, yes, the core people who you look up at the gravesite and they're there and those faces, they're feeling your pain too. So if you need to call them at midnight, or if you need to call them or whatever and text them, you know, they are feeling it too. And they probably are grateful for that text. Because, like, you know what? I was just weeping too, you know? Yeah.
Okay. And how did you end up, like, tell me about the journey from the isolation, the being paralyzed, the being kidnapped by grief, to you eventually producing and creating? Because I remember, you know, like, I remember looking at you, and that's another thing, like, clear up any misconceptions, because look, you know, me and you, I think it was a while before we got on the phone after, you know, Tiffany passed. But from what I was seeing, I was like, man, Toba is out here, like, beating the odds, overcoming, like, the fact that she is holding events and, like, creating. And you said that it kind of puts a stop to that for a while. So how did you get to that place of creating again? Or what was that like? Was it like it looked on social media?
No.
Okay. Tell us about it.
Okay. So basically, long story short, I was actually working on a candle line days before Tiffany passed, actually. So I was planning on releasing the candle line April 2nd, which is Poetic Good's birthday. But that's actually the day we ended up burying Tiffany. So now I share a birthday, the day an anniversary of the day I bury someone who was like my sister is now also the day I birthed my business, right? And that's just what it is going to be for the rest of my, you know, for my time here on Earth. I say all that to say, the reason why it wasn't like extremely, of course it was still hard, but everything was in place. You see what I'm saying? Like, I already had it planned out.
Right.
So it was just to, like, launch it. But of course, out of respect, I deferred it.
Right.
But I say all that to say, one of the things that gave me the fuel to do so is Tiffany knew me as Miss Poetic Goods. Tiffany poured into my business and, she loved my candles and all these other things. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this in honor of her because she would want me to continue to do this. And she loved watching me be the go-getter that I am. And she loved watching me be the bull. So I'm like, you know what? As much as this hurts, I'm still going to release this candle line in the month of April in honor and in celebration of Tiffany.
Now, did therapy help? Like, I'm trying to figure out how you got to this mindset of, I'm going to live in her honor. I'm going to do this stuff in her honor. I'm just in awe. So like, how did...
Unfortunately, don't take after me. I haven't been in therapy since Tiffany passed, unfortunately.
Okay.
And it's not something that I intentionally have done. Mm-hmm. I've wanted it, but I just never did it.
Okay.
Yeah. But how did I get here? It's deep work. Talking. Okay. Yeah, work, talking with God. I've been listening to sermons, honestly. His name is Pastor Darius Daniels.
Okay.
His sermons have been a boat that have kept me afloat. I didn't even mean anyway. So
that's a poet, everybody. That's a creative. Okay.
No, but yeah, his sermons have, they've been therapeutic for me. Now I'm not saying, sermons are therapy. I'm not that person.
Right.
But yes, those have helped me. And again, how do I say this? My brain works differently because I am a creative and I am able to like visualize and think things through on my own. So while I don't recommend it for everyone, I think I'm in a good place.
Okay. That's real.
Yeah, for right now. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's real. Talk about it because listen, some of us are so self-aware that we therapize ourselves. We go to the therapy room, we sit down with them and we run these people out of a job. Can we be honest? And yeah, you're definitely one of those people. You're very introspective. You're very reflective. You use your resources. And that's a lot of times what a therapist is encouraging us to do. So I'm happy that you were able to go to those deep places. Yeah, it's just, I like when you say grief is for you because you're not telling it, you're literally saying like, this may not be what you do and I may not be recommending it, but that is your story and we're here to hear your story. So I know that Tiffany would be so proud of you and the woman you are and what you're creating and continuing to bless the world with because she did know you as that. So shout out to you.
Thank you.
I'm here looking at your bed. It looks so nicely laid.
Thank you.
And we talked about how, what we're seeing on social media is not necessarily, you already had these things prepped. Like, you're not out here doing, things are not always as they seem, right? So you said there was a lot of conversations with God. Take us into your bedroom if that's where you were having the conversations. Like, let's see beyond social media. Like, take us into those moments.
It's actually funny because talking about my bed, that's where I found out Tiffany passed. I got the call in the middle of the night. So my bed was a hard place to be for a while. Okay. Sleeping, of course, just period, whether you're standing there or wherever it is, sleeping is hard.
Yeah.
But also just receiving that news. And then on top of that, like, Tiffany passed on a Friday. So like, I call it Friday night frights now because it's that Monday, I unfortunately had to go back to work. I ended up taking off, but I had to go back to work to at least say, hey,
I gotta go.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even that with my job, I had one of those jobs that even when you're off, you're still called in. So it was just very tough to handle all that. But, on a Monday, what did you do this weekend?
Ooh.
I lost someone tragically. And that's tough. But I say all that to say, my bedroom is definitely my safe haven. And I actually have this activity that I've done since I was a child. You know how they say go to your room?
Yeah.
Whether it's for trouble, as a punishment or for whatever it is, whether, your room is your safe haven. What happens when you're in public and you can't go to your room? What's an alternative? Your mind. Mm-hmm. So when I can't go to my literal room, I go to my mind.
Okay.
And I had to make sure I made that place comfortable enough to go there. Because as you know, when you're grieving, especially in the early stages, you're in public and you start bawling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you go? Of course, you go to the bathroom. Actually, no, go to the bathroom. But, but like, you know, in those moments, you have to be able to go to your metaphorical room, which is your mind, and kind of talk yourself down in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my room, I would go there and break down. I'm one of those people who, my dad actually said it, not me, but he said, we do our crying in the rain. So I was someone who didn't want to, I don't like breaking down in front of people. It's very uncomfortable for me, especially because like in stages of tragedy, I always find myself in leadership positions or like taking care or calling shots on things. So it just feels tough to be breaking down, and I'm organizing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again, like that, you know, we do our crying in the rain where no one can see it.
Right.
That's what my room is for.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I would say.
So what were those conversations like with God? What were you saying? What were you crying out?
Of course, again, the anger wasn't just for the situation. It was at God. It was tough. It was tough to pray. Especially, you know what? There was this one specific verse, the whole no weapons formed against me shall prosper. To this day, I struggle saying that because it prospered on Tiffany. She's not here because somebody shot her.
The weapon literally.
The weapon prospered.
Literally prospered.
So it's like, okay, this thing that we've been reciting and we go out with and say it doesn't work for me right now because God, what happened? I felt like God dropped the ball. So it's like, whew. Grief just reminds you the reason the book of Lamentations exists in the Bible, right? And I lamented as much as I wanted.
Okay.
And I said, God, don't you dare be mad at me for it. Because, you know what? So, yeah. And again, I think I have a very personal relationship with God. I'm very comfortable with being mad at him. And I know it won't be the first or the last time I'm going to be upset with God. And yeah, I just removed the cotton candy from my eyes and realized, again, as long as I'm on this earth, this is really just the beginning. I don't know what else is to come. I really don't. And it sucks to think about, but you better get comfortable with being mad at God, unfortunately. Yeah. But a huge question I had to ask myself, and again, it came from one of Darius Daniel's sermons, is what do you do with your emotional attachment to something God is done using? And that question is hard to ask about people.
Right.
Especially people who are no longer on this earth. It's different when like, okay, a breakup. Okay. Or a job.
Right.
Or you know what I mean? Something like that. But it's hard to ask about someone who you love dearly who got took. But nonetheless, is it still applicable? What do you think?
No, because I'm the interviewer and I was literally about to ask you. So what's your answer?
This is a conversation.
What's your answer to that?
This is a conversation. What do you think?
What do you do with your emotion with your emotional attachment when God is done using what you've used for your emotional attachment? That's what you're saying? Sorry.
What do you do with your emotional attachment to something or someone that God is done using?
What do you do with your emotional attachment to something or someone that God is done using? Oh. I don't know.
Me neither. So, so that's the thing. We're still, I'm still figuring it out. And the thing is, let me answer it the way I've learned to answer it. For example, Tiffany, Bolu, right? All these people who we love, right? God's not done using them though, right? Because Bolu is still touching lives and making an impact from beyond, right? Same way Tiffany, you know what I mean? All these people we've lost, they're still making an impact. So even though God may not be done using them literally, but for him to allow what happened to happen, he was done using them in some form. So you have to think about that, and you have to allow God to be God, which is the hardest thing ever. But I'm just learning, this whole grief process is just making me learn you can't just let God be God when it's good. And it's really making me lean into being a vessel.
Looking good, you do.
That's all I have to say.
I needed a moment. You know, if we were in church right now, that's a moment where somebody would start running around and the Pentecostal people start shouting. You can't just let God be God when it's good. I love that you said that, you know, these people are still being used. Because they are.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. I remember when we were more in the thick of it, we were talking about just like what not to say.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come at me with that BS right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not what to say. So please educate us. What is the do not say to a person who's grieving, or do not say about, you know, yeah.
Honestly, it's, again, hindsight is 2020. It's hard.
Yeah.
Because
for sure.
First of all, silence is the best resort.
Okay.
Be there.
Okay.
Just be there. But if you can't, because, you know, again, we're humans.
Yeah.
People start rambling when they're nervous.
We get awkward.
Yeah, you know, and they start trying to like give you reasons as to why God took that person.
Yeah.
And maybe are comforting, maybe a little around, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But like rationalizing it is tough. Yeah. You can't rationalize murder. I'm sorry. There's no way to make that make sense.
Right.
So don't. Okay. Don't ask people what happened. For example, I was actually at work today and this actually came up. And because of my experience, I spoke on the person's behalf. Someone passed away and there were so many questions around their passing. Yeah. And somebody's like, I wonder if I should go ask their fiance what happened. I said, don't. Automatically don't. Yeah. At least right now. Give them some time, because I'm sure they're being bombarded with calls. Oh, what happened? Each time you have to tell the story, literally feels like you're being stabbed. So humans do this thing because of their own fulfillment. They want to know what happened and their own curiosity, and it makes them feel better, that they forget about, maybe asking this person who's grieving is going to suck. They don't think about that. Yeah. So they just ask you and they make you rehash it. And again, I get rude and angry when I'm grieving. And I'll tell you know what, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm very matter of fact, and go ask somebody else, get somebody else to do it, because I don't have the capacity for that. And so, yeah, I would just say that don't ask questions to quench your curiosity. Just be there for that person. You know what I mean? Or ask somebody who's maybe, again, on the outer core, who may know what happened. If you're dying questions, if you really need to know. Yeah. But yeah, don't add to it. If you can't help, don't hinder. That's what I would say. Use your common sense, your critical thinking skills. Put yourself in that person's shoes.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. I definitely agree that presence is everything. Presence goes a long way. And yeah, like you don't have to have, there is nothing. I guess something I heard a lot was there are no words.
Yeah.
And it's true.
It's very true.
So just don't try to make there be any, because there really aren't. So yeah. And then is there anything in particular that you remember hearing from someone that was super helpful?
No.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay.
Again, I was just very angry. Right. And anger is very impermeable. Yeah. So there wasn't really anything you can say to me that could make me feel better. The whole like, oh, it's going to get better with time or whatever. Yeah. I wasn't hearing that. Right. No.
Okay. Well, what would you say to somebody who just lost somebody close to them? And
I'm so sorry for your loss. That's all I have to say, because there's nothing more to say. I would say, honestly, because even I know as Christians, or as people who believe in God, we're trained to point them to God. But again, a lot of people who have lost, they don't want to look at God right now. They're angry. So even that could make them feel a way like, just keep praying, keep your eyes on God. Sometimes they don't want to hear that. So all I can offer when it's fresh are my condolences. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry for your loss. How can I support you? Questions that are like actionable. What do you need from me? But anything that's like, even me as a poet, I'm not giving you any quotes or anything like that. No, again, I'm going to be silent. I'm going to ask you, how can I help you? But that's it.
That's good. What's the biggest way that you would say Tiffany's death has changed you?
I think I quite literally started living like every day could be my last. And yeah, she, again, literally someone who passes away minutes before their birthday, who would have thought, right? So we just don't know. We just don't know. That's it. I started living like someone who doesn't know. And I started living my life to the fullest, started doing things immediately. I've always been an actionable person, but man, has it been amplified.
Okay, you thought she was actionable before.
And yeah, just don't defer things that you already have the provision for. Do it now. Do it now. Have fun now. Love now.
Okay. She said, take the money out of the savings now. Okay. Go on the trip now. Okay.
Do everything
Write
now.
the book
now.
Mm-hmm. Start the podcast
now.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and then just like, yeah, loving people. I feel a certain type of rest when it comes to Tiffany because I know she knows exactly how I felt about her. I know Tiffany knows or knew I loved her. Mm-hmm. The love is still present tense. Mm-hmm. Tiffany knew I loved her. Her knowledge may be past tense, but my love is present tense. Just making sure that the people who are still here on this earth with me on this side, I'm very honest, very communicative, because I want, God forbid, again, we don't know. However we leave things, I want to be able to rest and know that, that person knew I love them.
Yeah. Nothing left unsaid.
Nothing left unsaid. Well, that's kind of again, like it's interesting to say that because there's so much that I actually would like to say, you know what I mean? But like,
not everybody need to hear all of that. But...
No, I'm saying nothing to that person, to Tiffany, you know, there's so much you want to say to the,
but as you're living your life now, you're trying not to leave things left unsaid. Yeah, that's what I meant. I thought you were going another direction with that. Okay, so you talked about hope before and how like that's it's not the ransom. Currency. Okay, there it is. She said hope is the ransom, and it's very hard to find that. Where do you get it from? Like nobody has it. Like no one around you has it. Do you have it now?
Yeah, I think I have. Well, not that I do have hope. I have hope because hope and faith are very close. They're neighbors.
Okay.
And again, as you continue to just heal, your faith in God strengthens. And I've been able to find it because I've known that, yes, Tiffany passing away hurts. It's still hurting. But they're not lying when they say that they're in a better place. They're not lying when they say that. So Tiffany's pain and suffering is no longer. Now, is that the way I think she would have chosen it? No, I'm sure she would have chosen to still be here and still enduring, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, she is in a better place wherever she is. And I have hope that the people who are still here are going to continue her legacy. And, everyone who I've lost. Yeah. Because unfortunately, like Tiffany's not, the only person I've lost, but she's the biggest impact of grief for sure. But everyone who you lose, how can we continue their legacy? How can we be an example of what it means to have hope or find hope? Because you do have to search for it when something tragic happens in your life. And I found hope in creativity. And again, it sucks because a lot of people aren't creative. And I know it's a blessing and a gift from God because it does save me so many times in my life. To create art that not only feeds me, but other people, and for my medicine cabinet to be in-house, to be built inside of me, right? So that being said, I use my gift and I use my medicine cabinet that's in-house and I share it with others because I know someone else is going to benefit from this vitamin of vision that I found after grief and being blind, because that's another thing, grief blindfolds you, So, yeah.
Okay. It kidnaps you. It blindfolds you. What else does it do? Please talk about because we need somebody to blame. So let it grieve.
Man, it stabs you. Yeah, it empties your. Man, you know what? It literally empties your pockets. Death is expensive, and that's another thing people don't talk about. So there's just it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go on. I don't want this episode to be extremely sad and all that stuff. But grief does a lot. And I'm listing all these things because I want someone to know, again, this is for validation.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Mm-hmm.
I feel your pain.
Mm-hmm.
Grief does a whole bunch of things to you and it leaves you traumatized.
Mm-hmm. So you saying you found help through your creativity and you're sharing it with people, and you're carrying on Tiffany's legacy. I want to hear a little bit about Tiffany from your perspective, just to share with the world if people didn't have the chance to meet her. Like, who was Tiffany to you? What was your experience of Tiffany, and what do you want people to know about her?
So Tiffany came into my life when I was, I was a junior in high school. So she was my brother's girlfriend for 8 years. She became our sister, our bonus sister. Again, 8 years, that's a long time to be in people's lives. So yeah, she was my sister. Tiffany did my hair for prom. She helped me set up my indoor, photo drop for prom. Like, she was literally a big sister to me. We fought like sisters. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like, sometimes you feel guilty for the argument you have with people who are no longer here, but sisterly things happen. You know what I mean? So you can't call that person a sister and you guys never had a scuffle. So it's, I'm grateful for everything. We fought like sisters. We made up like sisters. We loved each other like sisters. We laughed. Tiffany was a funny woman. She's hilarious. She was just someone who I could always count on to be silly with. She poured into me. She was always just taught, like, Toba, you need to, like, just keep being you. You're just you're a force. So, like, Tiffany just always spoke life into me. She was, I have 2 big sisters by blood, but, she was definitely a bonus big sister. Yeah. Tiffany was just so many things. She was a light. She was a connector. She was a bridge. I met so many people through her. She was someone who I think she spoke up for herself. I think Tiffany spoke up for herself. She was a no-nonsense woman. And I just enjoyed her. She was someone who was very enjoyable to be around. In fact, she's like one of those people who, like, when you go somewhere and you show up without her, like, where's Tiffany? You know what I mean? So imagine living life and that question is outstanding. Where's Tiffany? Yeah. So her presence is definitely missed. But while she was here, she lived well, I would like to say. She lived well. And part of carrying on her legacy is humor. I loved laughing with Tiffany. That's one of the things I just remember all the time, is just all our jokes that we would crack and literally just like cry laughing. So humor is a medium that I can still like feel her. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, I mean, I did not know Tiffany nearly as well as you did, but I'm just grateful to have been able to experience her in a few settings, all of joy, whether it was like Thanksgiving 2016, I think that might have been when I first met her, because I came to Chicago and like we were at, anyways, it was just like fun. And then Pastor Lou was performing and, we had that whole thing. And then, yeah, just fun, smiling, beautiful, bright, good vibes, good energy. So yeah, just a beautiful person and grateful to have known her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was an aunt to our nephews and nieces. So yeah, while she was here, she was a beautiful person, and her beauty is still imminent.
Okay. So we are nearing the end of our conversation. Is there anything that you would like to share that I haven't asked you up to this point yet?
About grief specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just moral of the story is allow yourself to be that version of you when you're grieving. It looks different each time. allow yourself to be, allow yourself to heal, allow yourself to feel joy. Let's talk about the guilt when you feel joy after you've lost someone. You got to cash in joy. You can't sit on it, right? So the person who you're mourning wouldn't want you to sit on joy. They would want you to cash it in and then experience it and enjoy it, because we're talking about finding hope. That's how you find the hope, is when those moments of joy come along. Don't fight it. Allow it. Allow yourself to laugh when something funny happens. Allow yourself to be present, to build a new life. Because that's the thing. We do this thing where we try to keep life as is, to keep it close to when they were still there. And unfortunately, that's just not how life works.
Yep.
And you're going to slowly start to see the setting in which you last knew them changing. And again, you have to allow it. You have to allow it. And this is just a huge part of the human experience. And again, I don't think it was very weird that the candle line I was working on was called Human Nature, that I was telling you about when Tiff passed. But it was called Human Nature, and it made me dive into, like, what is human nature about? What is humanity about? What is experiencing this life as a human with a conscience and feelings and a tongue to express those feelings? What is that about? And just let yourself roam. If you're not someone who can think alone and you need therapy, please enroll yourself in it. But yeah, your thoughts go all over the place when you're grieving, and it literally changes your makeup. So do not beat yourself up for not being the person you were prior to that horrible experience happening. And again, tragedy takes turns. So it may be you right now. Unfortunately, I'm not putting this on anyone, but that's just how life goes. It's going to hit someone else in your circle. Being able to support each other is huge. You need community, you need support. So just, lean on one another, fall together. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have so many things that I want to say, but let's wrap this up. We'll talk about it after. Okay, so I love how you ended with, don't beat yourself up, and, understand that it's going to be a different version of yourself, because this whole podcast is called There's Grace for That, to remind people that there is grace for that, and it's okay, especially when you're going through tough times, grief being one of the toughest times. So how are you giving yourself, or how have you given yourself grace through the journey? You've already kind of talked about it, but just to explicitly name it.
Yeah, I feel like people do this thing where they're like, I don't know, they beat themselves up, and I beat myself up. I'm not gonna say, let me not say people do this thing. I do it too, whatever. But I ask myself, I kind of list the things that I'm juggling or holding. And if I drop something, I always make myself look at my hands, metaphorically. Toba, you have on your plate. You dropped one thing. And so, who wouldn't?
And so, what a Nigerian way to put it.
And so, for real, okay, and again, grief does this thing where it kind of trivializes everything else because someone just passed away. So, honestly, hold on to what really matters. Okay, you let this person down this one time. If they don't get over it, they don't get over it. Because that's another thing about life. People either get over things or they don't. Now, I'm not saying don't try to be a good person, but you know what I mean? It is that simple. Either, so, and again, I try my best. And that's really what it is. As long as, again, that whole thing about giving myself rest. Am I giving myself rest by giving my best? Yes. That's how it works. And there is this saying that says, if you had 20% to give that day and you gave 20% that day, you still gave 100%. So just evaluating, what do I have today to give? If that's not enough for you, then, and so, okay. Because again, people, especially with high functioning people, they say, whatever, people don't adjust their metrics for what they expect out of you.
Hey,
so you have to do it for them.
Talk about it.
So again, and I understand not everyone is on that journey of self-awareness, and it's easier said than done, for all that. But like, I don't let people stress me out because I'm going to sit with myself and talk to myself and be real with myself. Look, I can't do that today. I'm gonna be real with you. And if I say no and that offends you, well, and so, but yeah, I think, just being real with yourself, having real conversations with yourself and others, not biting off more than you can chew. If you are that person who gets very busy when you're grieving or when you're sad, maybe you should reconsider it so that you don't crash, because that's what I left out. There were a lot of moments of me birthing things and I would crash. So it wasn't a healthy coping mechanism. I just want to throw that out there. It was just what I did to get through. I had to keep moving.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's how I give myself grace. It's just by examining the amount of me I have to give to myself and to the world and acting accordingly. And then also understanding that, again, God's not mad at me for being mad at him. God is an understanding God. He knows what he just allowed sucks.
Amen, sister. Because she said people will either get over it or they won't. And as a recovering people pleaser, it's so interesting how something like a close loss will just, something you've been trying to get yourself to realize for so long, then because you have so limited capacity, because you are out of everything else, like you just start to make the shift in your mind of like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like the way I was holding on to people's expectations and people's, whatever of me all this time. And it's been something I struggle with majority of my life. Then my brother dies and I'm like, oh, well, and so like at this point, and so I'm just so grateful for the people who have had grace for me. And I'm so grateful that I've gotten to a place to have grace for myself because I haven't had the capacity to not have grace for myself because I haven't had the capacity to do much, to do anything. Right. So it's so true. And I don't know if it's it is unfortunate, but oftentimes it takes these sorts of experiences where we can't do anything else for us to like really deep this message of it's okay. So I'm glad to see that you have deeped that message. And I mean, I know you've always kind of been a, I'm gonna do my own thing person, but I also know there's pressure and you're a very hard worker and you are somebody who likes to produce. And so, I just want to encourage you to continue having that perspective and trying to not take on too much and just realize that whatever you do is going to be successful because
Thank you. Amen.
So, like everything you do with excellence.
Thank you.
So if you're doing a little bit less at this time, it's okay. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for being here. I asked you how you're giving yourself grace. You told us. How can we support you? Like how can we support you in general?
The people?
Please, the people. Please, how can the people support you?
I mean, honestly, it's hard being a poet in today's world because depth is just not desired anymore. So how can you support me? Read my poetry book. It's called What If the Internet Fails Us? It's available on Amazon. Come to my events. If you're in Chicago, come to my events. I host a lot. And just, be a supporter of poetry. Help a sister out because, I'm trying to be a poet in today's world that could care less about meaning and depth and reading even. Like we're in a world where we want blurbs. So that's how we can, support. Feedback is always good, whether it's constructive criticism or like praise, whatever it is. I'm open to both. I want to get better. So like, how can I improve? What did you like? What can I keep? That is it. But you know what? I know we're about to close out, but that's actually something I want to talk about. In my poetry book, I talk about my responsibilities need to read the room. That's one of the poems in there. And it was talking about how when you get bad news, unfortunately, your obligations they don't get the memo. They don't understand that you're going through something. And I want to close out. I know we're about to wrap up, but I think one of the biggest lessons I want everyone to know, if you are a believer in God, unfortunately, the things you go through do not change God's expectations of you. And that is another hard pill to swallow. The things you go through do not change your destiny or what you're meant to do on this earth. So how do you accept that? How do you continue to forge ahead? And that's one of the things that I've been trying to focus on. Like, Toba, you're still here. You still have to speak life into the world some way, somehow. And your pain is not only yours. God gave it to you because he wanted you to refine it and then pollinate it. So that's what I want everyone to think about. What have you been through? But what are you here for? And what's the point of convergence? Where do they meet, or the intersection? Yeah.
Better preach. Listen, y'all want to talk about on the podcast again? Put it in the No, because you dropped too many gems. Too many. And I know that we barely scratched the surface, really.
Yeah.
But what you said at the end, my dad would love that, because I feel like that's something that I hear him saying a lot, as far as your destiny and how you still got to be on that path. Mm-hmm. And life will try to derail you. And, mm-hmm. The fact that you are, it's a resistance, not giving in to whatever is pulling you away from your mm-hmm. destiny. If you still are determined to, move forward in the way that God has led you, that is amazing. Yeah. So,
and that's what sucks the most, because you've noticed, like, the story of the wilderness, God was hungry, mm-hmm. and that's when he was tempted the most. Mm-hmm. You've peeped how when you're grieving, that's when you have to fight. You have to summon so much strength. It's in those moments where you're weak, that all the tests happen all at once. Yeah. So absolutely, what Uncle says is facts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. God, the devil's not the only one. I mean, God's not the only one who sees you. Mm-hmm. There are other forces in this world that peep you're in a weak state. Mm-hmm.
And they know your potential.
Yep.
They know what you have to bring to the world, and they're like, we got to stop that.
Yep.
That's too strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my sister, we have come to the end. I like to end each of the podcasts with us, doing something cheesy and together saying, there's grace for that, so that people, I'm trying to get this to be like a household kind of message that people are saying to themselves. So, will you say it with me?
All right.
Okay, so.
Are you like a countdown or?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
There's grace for that.
Yay. Woo-hoo. Thank you so much.